Hey everyone, I'm Mike. Welcome to Aegis Moto Adventures. In this week's video, I'm going to describe to you how we navigate the TransAmerica Trail. Let me show you the gear we use. On top here is the Garmin Montana 680T. It's a dedicated GPS unit and works exceptionally well. Over here, I've got my smartphone, and I recently added to the handlebars here the quad lock so that I can keep the smartphone here instead of in my tank back. And then this device right here, it holds the roll chart that you get when you purchase the paper maps. Before I get into how I use these devices to navigate, it's important to go through the pros and cons of each one of these, including the compass of why I use all of them. Up first is the compass. The compass has been around, the magnetic compass has been around for a long time. It's simple to use and it's basically bomb-proof. You can drop these on the trail, and generally speaking, because most of them now are made out of like a polybicarbonate, are pretty shatter resistant. So they work exceptionally well. They get you in the general direction you need to go, and they don't require batteries. There's no way that the electronics will fail. They're just really, really easy to use and simple. The only downside to these is they get you just basic compass points, like west or northwest. But otherwise, in a pinch, when all else fails, these will work quite well. Paper maps are extremely useful because they often show more detail. I'm used to, here in the U.S., Geological Survey maps, which uses UTM coordinates. But those coordinates allow you to pinpoint yourself right on the paper map. A lot of these maps also will show gates, elevations very well because they're topographical maps, and they just give you more information than what you would normally get off of an electronic chart. Another nice thing about paper maps is you can make edits right on the map. If you carry a pencil or pen or highlighter with you, you can mark right on your map the information that you would like to have on there. I'll show it later, but on the TransAmerica trail maps, we've done exactly that, and it's quite helpful in when to know when to stop, or if there's a point of interest that you want to get off the trail to go look at. Another nice part about the paper maps is it works in all languages. In other words, if your map is in one language and you're in another country and you whip out your local map, that individual, even if you can't communicate with them very well, you can point or have them point on the map and get directions from them. So paper maps are still very, very useful. About their only downside is that they're very fragile. Most of them are not weather resistant, and if you happen to spill your cup of coffee on them or drop them and they get soiled, they just can't take abuse quite as well. Most GPS units come with a preloaded information or set of maps for whatever region you choose. A good portion of them now have turn-by-turn. They're programmable, which I really like. So in other words, you can set up how the screen appears and which information you can access first, or what's more important to you. It has different map datums. These are all tremendous pros that you don't always get with the smartphone. Also, they make GPS units, depending on which ones you purchase, are waterproof and rugged. A lot of cell phones don't have that feature. And another great feature about GPS units is they have multiple power sources. This Garmin Montana 680T that I use, it's hardwired to the bike, but you can take it out of the rugged mount, and it has a internal lithium-ion battery that you can use. But even if that fails, you can pull that out and just put in regular AA batteries. So in other words, you have a GPS unit that works basically no matter what, as long as you carry extra batteries with you. The cons of GPS units are they're really expensive, like that Garmin Montana 680T is extremely expensive. You got to really want a GPS unit to spend the extra dollars that I spent for that. And also, if you want to purchase new maps, like if you, the one I have has the North American set of maps, but if I go to South America, I'm going to have to buy a whole new SD card to go in it. And again, that costs additional dollars. So there's a little bit of a downside just from sheer cost of the GPS units. Smartphones are certainly the way of the future. It seems like everybody owns a smartphone now, or most everybody, which makes them convenient because you already own it and you don't have to go to the expense of a GPS unit. There's a lot of map apps out there now. I personally use Maps.me, but I've looked at some others, and they're getting quite good. And they'll only get better as the companies improve their apps and people provide more information to put in those apps. Also, those apps are free, so you just download them, and that makes it pretty simple. It won't take anybody with a little bit of smartphone savvy to catch on how to use these apps. Also, I like the smartphone because you can pinch zoom. In other words, you can zoom in or zoom out real easily. With a GPS unit, most of those, some of them are touchscreen now, but a lot of them that are still in use, you have to zoom by clicking on a plus or minus button. That's a little bit of a detriment compared to the smartphone. Smartphones too, when you're connected to the internet, either through your data or Wi-Fi, you can just access a wealth of information that you'll never be able to get currently on a dedicated GPS unit. So smartphones are really the way that navigation is going to be going, and it'll probably only improve. But so will GPS units. I don't think they'll ever be completely replaced. Some of the cons on a smartphone is a lot of them aren't waterproof. They're not ruggedized. They're just a little bit more fragile than some of the GPS units out there. A lot of GPS units aren't particularly waterproof or rugged either, but you can certainly buy those a lot easier than what you can find a waterproof or rugged smartphone. And most of the apps, I think, are using a map datum. KLM, I may be wrong about that, but it's like what Google Maps uses, but it's the only map datum that's available. So in other words, if you want to mate it with a paper map that uses different datums, then it'll be useless to mate up with that. Also, the apps, even though they're getting better, they may not contain all the detail that some of the maps that you can purchase for a GPS unit or that'll be on a paper unit. So there's some downsides to the smartphone, but overall, a smartphone navigation is going to be the way of the future, and it'll only continue to get better as companies develop their products that will match up what the end user is requiring. There are three basic reasons why I use all these devices in coordination with each other. One is redundancy. Redundancy gives you some confidence that the information you're receiving is accurate and that you're not making any mistakes. Two, overlapping information. One will have a little bit more information, say in this direction, and the other one will have a little bit more information in the other direction. Even though they are concurrent and overlapping, they provide just a little bit more information right at your fingertips. And then the third reason is that you just have access to more information, especially if with your smartphone. If you have a internet connection, that gives you almost unlimited information that you might need that you can apply to your certain circumstances in navigating. In episode 25, TransAmerica Trail 1, I show you in a little more detail about what the TransAmerica paper maps are, but you may be interested to know that the official Trans-American Trail map formats also come in an electronic version. Sam can send them to you either via email or on an SD card. And there's some advantages to the electronic version, which is a track, and there's some advantages to the paper, and I want to go through those a little bit with you. The paper maps come in two different versions, and you receive both of them. One's a folding version, which just gives you kind of like what a normal road map would look like without all the surrounding detail. And then the roll charts, which give you a turn-by-turn information on a scroll so that you can scroll through it. The paper maps also include latitude and longitude for each intersection, which is really nice and is helpful in navigating. It gives you road names, it gives you the distance to the next turn, and it provides a little extra on gas and lodging. An electronic track in the other version, it's like laying a line overlay on your GPS or your phone, whichever one that you're using it on. And I don't know if you have to, if it's just a GPS file, but if you want to use it on your phone, he already converts it for you, or whether you have to convert it after you get the GPS files. But either way, it lays a line on top of your GPS information, and you just follow that line. It's very simple, and it eliminates some of the problems that I had with the paper chart, in that if your location icon no longer matched up with your line on your GPS, you knew you were off track, and you just need to turn around and get back on track. It wasn't quite so simple with the paper charts. Some of the problems with the paper charts included outdated information or somewhat misleading information, like the one road that was mislabeled, and we thought it was in Virginia. It was actually in West Virginia. The blue rail car. There were some things that just made it a little bit difficult to navigate. One other thing occurred is that the GPS didn't match up where the actual road should start. Most of the time it did, but there were a few cases where either the GPS was off or the coordinates given on the roll chart were off. The TransAmerica Trail is copyrighted material, and the actual roll chart is too small to get a good video of. I've gone ahead and created an example here that shows you what the roll chart looks like. On the right hand side, it gives you some icons of what the intersections might look like, and then I'll give you an interpretation here on the left of how you use the roll chart. On the lower left of this video, you will see that there's a latitude and longitude. That gives you the location of the intersection, and the intersection icon shows you what you'll be physically looking at. And right above that, it gives the mileage that you are on that particular section of the Trans-American Trail. So in this particular case, even though it's fictitious, it's at the 178.25 miles. And when you get to the intersection, you'll turn right on Falls Hill Road. Right above that, you will notice there's a little box with mileage in it of 3.57 miles. That means you'll follow Falls Hill Road for 3.57 miles until you get to the next intersection, which is located by a latitude and longitude also. At the 181.82 mile marker, you'll turn left on Crazy Creek Trail. And you'll just keep repeating this for each subsequent intersection by rolling the chart towards you and scrolling it down. Now you can use the distance mileage, the 3.57 miles. Each time you get to the intersection, you can zero out your chipometer and then just follow that until you get to that miles to the next intersection. That's one way of locating the next intersection. However, because I was keeping track of my miles on my tripometer for fuel, and I was keeping my second tripometer for my overall distance for the day, I didn't use that mileage, but that's exactly what it's intended to be used for. T intersections were easy to navigate, especially if your T ended up where you came to the intersecting road and you had to turn left or right. I rarely used my GPS for these intersections because it was pretty obvious that when you got to the end of the road, you had to turn. However, there were a lot of times where you went for several miles with a lot of turnoffs in between the next turn that you were after. And in order to make sure that I got the right one, because sometimes the roads weren't labeled very well, especially when you were on Forest Service roads, some of them weren't labeled at all, I would go ahead and put the latitude and longitude into my GPS, and that would get me to the point, if it was close, I would be near the intersection or right on top of the intersection. So here I've booted up my GPS, and I'm just going to press where to go. And I have programmed this, because you can put these in whatever order you want them in. That's the nice part about a GPS unit. You can do some customization with it. And right at the top here, so that I don't have to scroll through a long list of options to get what I want to go, I put the coordinates right at the very top. And I would just press coordinates. And then I would use the coordinates on the roll chart on where I want to go. And that way I could get basically to the exact intersection. If there were multiple intersections, I could get to the correct intersection. Another nice thing about the GPS unit here versus a phone, with a phone you would have to enter the entire GPS coordinate number system. And on the GPS, a lot of the times the numbers, because it's got your current location, the numbers will already be in there. So you can just kind of arrow ahead to the numbers that have to change and then enter them. And that'll make it much quicker to enter it into the GPS unit versus a phone. And then when you have the coordinates entered in, you just hit the little check mark and it will take you where you want to go. And that's a really nice feature to be able to have that. Now that you've seen how I use the paper TransAmerica trail maps in combination with a GPS to navigate the trail, let's take a look at the difference between paper versus the electronic maps. The paper charts are less expensive, while the electronic ones are a little more expensive. With the paper, you can add edits, notations, and gives you a chance to write down where you want to take a break, where you want to take a break at, and that information right on the paper chart. On the electronic chart, you won't be able to make those type of edits. However, with the paper chart, you will have some errors or some little quirks that don't work out quite right. And with the electronic chart, you should be able to stay right on the trail. Because it's pretty much idiot-free in the sense that you really can't make mistakes on it. But with the paper one, you end up with a unique ride because you make alterations to it or have mistakes. And with the electronic chart, you'll have an identical track as everybody else. Well, I know this video was a little long, and if you made it to the very end, thank you very much for watching it. I'm hoping that some of the viewers out there will already have some experience with the TransAmerica Trail, that they can add comments down below on how they navigated, or just in general navigation tips that will help the viewers out. I'd really appreciate that. Well, if you like this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Take care.